2 more British women who are married to Islamic State fighters have been stripped of their citizenship. They're currently being held in a Syrian detention centre. It follows the death of the 3-week-old son of Isil bride Shamima Begum, whose citizenship was revoked by the British Home Secretary, a decision for which he was both criticised and praised.
The tragic death of Shamima Begum's baby, Jara, is a stain on the conscience of this government. It's against international law to make someone stateless and to leave a vulnerable young woman and an innocent child in a refugee camp, where we know infant mortality to be high, is morally reprehensible. The Home Secretary failed the British child, and he has a lot to answer for.
It's absolutely tragic that a baby has died. And of course, I understand this is a really terrible problem. But on the other hand, the job of the Home Secretary is to protect all the people in the United Kingdom. He will have had advice on what was the right thing to do, and I totally support his decision.
We failed as a country to safeguard the child. This was an entirely avoidable death of a British citizen. There was no attempt to help by the Home Office. I think it's shocking how the Home Secretary has treated this situation.
Shamima Begum, who's of Bangladeshi origin, left the UK in 2015 to join ISIL at the age of 15. Begum was pregnant in a Syrian refugee camp early last month when she said she wanted to return home to have her baby, adding that she never regretted joining ISIL. And Shamima Begum is not the only one. While the Syrian city of Baghouz remains the last stronghold of ISIL in the country, some of the militants' wives refuse to believe the caliphate is doomed. There was little sympathy for the women from the guests we spoke to.
We've got rapists walking away with pitiful sentences. She would have walked away with a pitiful sentence in comparison. We also have absolutely no way, only her word, that she didn't do anything that would have been, let's say, the act of terrorism. That also puts her at risk of radicalising others in this country.
If she can be put on trial, she should be put on trial. But this is a woman who just weeks ago was justifying the Manchester bombing of the Ariana Grande concert, in which, you know, all those children died, and she was justifying it. And, you know, so you have to think that her level of indoctrination is pretty deep. Any child that is a British citizen should be brought back to this country. And frankly, I think they should be forcibly removed from the parents who put them in this appalling jeopardy.
Which we would have then been told, you're totally inhumane because you've ripped a child away from its mother. So we couldn't do that. There was no other option. I think Sajid Javid did exactly what he should have done. I applaud them for his bravery.
If you look at France, you look at Belgium, you look at Germany, and how many Islamist terrorist attacks have actually been committed by people who have returned from Syria, then I wouldn't be glib about it.
Let's just put our feelings to a side and let's say that we're not going to join them in their barbarity. We're going to maintain our values of humanity, the rule of law and justice, and we're going to allow her back in. Okay. We're going to put her on trial, and I'll be very happy to see her behind prison for a very long time for her crimes. We've got to make sure that there's safety and protection for those children and women, and that they're held to account. And then there's going to be a global conversation, maybe through the International Criminal Court, to actually hold these fighters responsible for the crimes that they committed.
According to the Save the Children charity, there are now more than 2,500 children in camps in northern Syria from around 30 countries. Their homelands are engaged in debate about whether or not they should accept them back. A recent survey, for instance, in France, suggests that 67% of respondents didn't want the children of Islamists back in the country. We got the views of our guests on that.
Let's not forget, is the third child who has died to this young woman. But it's this young woman who has put her and her tragically now dead children into this situation. She took herself into this area. It's an awful, awful situation, but tragically, it's an awful situation of their own making.
Let's have some humanity. This is a British citizen, the baby, who died. And died because our government didn't do anything to bring that child back to the UK.
Of course, children shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of their parents, but she made a conscious choice. She may have been 15 at the time. She has been out there now 4 or 5 years. She had no conscience about seeing beheaded heads discarded in dustbins. She doesn't regret her choices. Sajid Javid did the right thing. He put the safety of this country first and foremost.
We live according to our obligations under international law, and we cannot make somebody stateless. This is our problem. She was born in our country, she was radicalised in our country, and surely it's right and proper that she comes back to the UK, she's held to account, she's put on trial.